Now we'll look at how we apply finite element analysis to a bar that is in longitudinal vibration. And we're going to be able to compare this to what we did analytically with bars in longitudinal vibration, or columns. So for any of our finite element analysis methods, we are going to need to create what we call local mass matrices and local stiffness matrices. And what the local refers to is at an elemental level, what is the mass matrix for that individual element. So every element is going to get its own mass matrix, as we're going to start to see here, and every element is going to get its own stiffness matrix. And then to assemble our entire object, we're going to start to link them all together. So if we have a single element here of our longitudinal bar, we're going to have a node or a joint on the left, which in this picture we'll call node 1, and we'll have one on the right we'll call node 2. And within this element, we have this constant density, this constant Young's modulus, and this constant cross-sectional area. So we'll say that for every element, its left side is going to have some displacement u1 attached to node 1, and on the right, some displacement u2. So the approximation we're going to make is we're going to be finding u1 and u2, but we have to make an assumption about what is happening inside our element between these two nodes. And that assumption we're going to make for what is u of x for every space in between is that it's going to be basically a linear interpolation between what is happening on the left side and what's happening on the right side. We're going to say that any particle inside the element between the left and the right end, that's what u of x is, going to be, its displacement is going to be whatever u1 is, plus the weighted average between u2 and u1 as we go from left to right. So let's see what happens here. If x is 0, if we're at the extreme left, well, then we're just getting u1. If we're at the extreme right, where x is equal to L, then we're just getting u2. And that's just going to be this linear gradient in between. So this approximation for what the displacement is everywhere inside an element is going to be pretty good if we are working with elements where we are staying within the linear elastic region, and they have linear properties, which is most of the materials we're going to be working with. And these were also limitations for using the analytical method or the continuous method before. If we have a more complicated material property where maybe a linear relationship is not going to be valid, then we might need a different, what we call here, shape function. So this u of x, the way that we are saying what's happening between the left side and the right side, is the shape function. So what we do next is kind of similar to when we were finding the effective mass of a beam to include in our discrete cases. We want to see for this whole element what is its total kinetic energy. Calculate that across this entire element. What we're going to need to look at is finding 1/2 its mass times its velocity squared for every particle inside of our element. So what we see here is that if we know the kinetic energy of every particle, if we add it all up or if we integrate it from the left side to the right side, that gives us the total kinetic energy. So any particle that is going to have a width of dx is going to then have a mass of rho a times dx. So that is for any small slice here, that is its mass, and then that particle or that slice's velocity is going to be its time derivative, and then that gets squared. So this is just 1/2 mv squared going from the left side to the right side. So that is analytically what the kinetic energy is. If we now put in our definition for u of x in here, and we do this partial differentiation, well, then we replace that u of x with this term that has u1 and u2 in it, and we integrate it. What we're going to find here is that the total kinetic energy using this shape function looks like this. We have this rho al over 6, and then we have the u1 dot terms, so the velocity of the left node. We have the u2 dot terms that use the velocity of the right node. And what we can do with this expression is, instead of writing it out in this scalar way, we're going to put it into a matrix form. So we're going to say that that kinetic energy can also be expressed as 1/2 times the vector u dot, so that's u1 and u2, times some little m, which is going to be our local mass matrix, which we'll define in a second, times u dot. Again, that's u1 dot, u2 dot. And if we put it into this matrix form, we find that if we multiply it by this local mass matrix little m, when it's in the form of this rho al over 6 times the matrix 2, 1, 1, 2, if we put this m into this expression for t, if we do the expansion, if we do the matrix multiplication, we get back exactly this expression for t. So this little m is what we call the local mass matrix, and this can be computed for every element that is in our system. And what it's going to allow us to do is to approximate the kinetic energy of the entire element just based on the velocity of its left node and its right node, and not having to know what is in between. But again, the assumption we make here is that this shape function u of x is going to be accurate for our particular element. So that's our local mass matrix. We're going to do a very similar idea to find what we call the local stiffness matrix. We're going to use that same shape function, which is going to again approximate the displacement everywhere inside the element based on the displacement at the left node and the right node of that element. But now we are going to find basically an equivalent spring constant, but in matrix form, by using the potential energy. So the potential energy can be found by taking E times A times the strain squared, the axial strain squared. And we saw this before in strength and materials or intermediate strength and materials, where we were looking at strain energy inside of deformable objects. So here I am again splitting up this element into very tiny slices, each one dx long, and I'm going to find the strain energy in every infinitesimal slice, add them all together. That's basically what integration is doing to find the total potential energy in my element. So using this same shape function and now differentiating it with respect to x, a partial differentiation with respect to x, I can compute this and I get this expression for my potential energy based on only u1 and u2, the deflection at the left node and the right node of my element. And this too I can express in a matrix form. So I can say it's 1/2 times u transpose, where u is u1 and u2, times k, a local stiffness matrix, times u, again, u1 and u2. So if that K matrix is specifically this EA over L times the matrix 1, -1, -1, 1, then I get now in a matrix form, plugging this in, doing the matrix operations, getting my V, I get exactly back this expression for V with U1s and U2s in it, which again, based on the shape function I'm using, is exactly the total potential energy in the system. So I've done a simplification here that I can express the total potential energy of this element if all I know is the displacement of the left node and the right node.